Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's presentation of autism spectrum disorder, what it really looks like and how you can help. My name's Rachel Robinson. I'm a special educator from Student Support Services at the Elizabeth South Education Office. Through mindfulness today, I'd like to acknowledge our country. I invite you to take a moment to acknowledge where we are and our connection to others. I invite you to take 2 minutes to put down any thoughts racing around in your mind, any hassles or tensions you brought with you today. Put them down with the full knowledge that you can pick them up again in 2 minutes if you choose. Get rid of anything that you have in your hands. Sit comfortably in your chair. Feel the connection of your feet on the floor. Rest your hands in your lap or on your knees. If you feel comfortable, you might like to close your eyes. Take a moment to notice your breathing. Focus on the feeling of breath entering and leaving your body. You may notice the breath in your nostrils or mouth. You may notice it in your chest, shoulders or belly. Just notice the feeling of breathing. Now take your focus to your feet and feel their connection to the floor. This floor connects to a building where people come and meet, share, connect and learn. This building has hosted many special learning events, meetings and connections for many people since it has been built. Imagine that the building and the floor beneath your feet dissolve. Your shoes dissolve and your feet are now connected to the ground beneath this building. Imagine the feeling of your feet on the ground. For many years, people have walked on this ground. They have met here on this land, living and learning, connecting and valuing this space. Feel the footsteps of the people who have walked here before. We take a moment to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on today is the traditional land of the Aboriginal people and that they have a strong connection and relationship to this place. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and we thank them for their continuing connection to country, culture and community. Now, bring back your attention to your feet in this room. Notice the feeling of your breath entering and leaving your body, and with one mindful breath, return to the room and we will start our session together today. Our aim for today, to pinpoint your students' barriers to learning based on the information that you gain from matching your students' current behaviour or difficulties in your environment with the criteria from the DSM-V that they were originally diagnosed by. Another aim is to discover their functional needs so you can develop goals to help them progress in your environment. And by doing this, and exploring their differences, I hope you will leave today with ideas on where to start supporting your students and where to start planning for them. I'll get you thinking today about these ducks. These ducks were an idea given to me by a friend of mine who has 3 children with autism spectrum disorder. She once described her children as being beautiful and all the same on the outside, but on the inside they were completely different. Think of these ducks as all the children who walk through your door with the potential to play and learn. How would we describe our children in our environment with autism spectrum disorder? If you think about what they really look like on the inside, they are brilliant and colourful with lots of things going on. Lots of sensory needs, social needs, communication needs and learning needs. As mentioned earlier, we're going to look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, DSM-V criteria for autism spectrum disorder. I won't go through all of it. I'll get you to pause the presentation in a minute, but this is what we'll be focusing on when we look at the barriers to learning of your children. So now, please pause the presentation for a few minutes to read through the criteria and start thinking about students at your site who have the diagnosis. Now you've thought about your children, let's look at thinking about students in your preschool or class who have received this diagnosis. I want you to take time in a second to write down the names of your students ready for the first activity. Please pause this video for the next 20 minutes and write down examples of your students' persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across contexts. Think about your students' difficulties in social emotional exchanges, your students' difficulties in non-verbal communicative behaviours used for social interaction. Please pause now. Okay, well done. You now have a list of your students' barriers to learning relating to criteria A and the DSM-V. That is, their underlying issues or presenting behaviours that are creating barriers. Please pause once again over the next 20 minutes to write down an example of your students' restricted, repetitive patterns of behaviours, interests or activities. Think about your students' stereotyped or repetitive speech, motor movements or how they use objects. Think about your students' excessive adherence to routines, ritualised pattern of verbal or non-verbal behaviour or excessive resistance to change. Think about, once again, your students' highly restricted fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. And finally, think about their hyper or hyporeactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. Please pause video now. Now you have another list of your students' barriers to learning, this time relating to criteria B in the DSM-V. That is, their underlying issues or presenting behaviours that are creating barriers. Finally, I just want you to think about the child's functional needs. Look at your list of barriers to learning and make a list of the functional needs of your student. Think about what skills the child will need to develop in order to function successfully in the preschool or school environment. What adjustments will you need to make to your teaching and the environment to develop the child's engagement in the curriculum and environment? Where to from here? Think about your planning. Use your functional needs to plan differentiated learning for your students. Pinpoint where these needs belong in the EYLF and the Australian curriculum. If they are working below foundation, think about doing an ABLES assessment, which will help you pinpoint what strategies to work on to move them towards foundation. Develop a one plan. Use your barriers to learning, your functional needs, and the adjustments to formulate your students' goals. Finally, work with me. For further assistance, please contact me via email. Thank you for being here today. If you have time, would you please send me your feedback on how you found today's presentation, especially if there is anything further you need to know, or if there is something I could have done differently. My email is rachel.robinson@sa.gov.au. Thank you.